Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day, and I hope everyone has been having a great week out there so far. I do apologize for coming at you a little bit later in this evening's video. Me and the fam have soccer on Tuesday evenings in the spring and in the fall, and actually tonight was our last soccer meetup of the fall, so of course it's been a busy night. And normally I don't even make videos on Tuesday nights in the spring and the fall because of soccer, but we're staring down the potential of a major hurricane in the eastern Gulf of Mexico here in the next 48 hours. So I thought we definitely need to pump out another update and give you guys the latest information. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what's currently going on in the Western Caribbean, as we do have a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is Tropical Storm Helene, forecast to become a hurricane sometime tomorrow. We'll speak on that. We'll go over the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll really zoom in to this cone for you guys, give you folks a really good idea of the peak intensity and where this thing is going. And then we'll go over all model guidance, the global model guidance, and the hurricane models also. I mean, we'll break it all down for you folks. The GFS, Euro, Icon, all the hurricane models will get very detailed for you folks, and kind of compare the strength of all of them and maybe the weaker scenarios against some of the stronger scenarios. And then we'll go over impacts. This video will be jam-packed of detailed information on the potential impacts of soon-to-be Hurricane Helene. We'll talk about winds, storm surge, rainfall, the risk of flash flooding, and we'll even speak a little bit on the tornado risk that will definitely be there. I would say Thursday could be your highest tornado risk day. So we'll talk about it all. At the very end of the video, we'll have a timestamp up for breaking down the environment that does support a major hurricane and why this has an opportunity to really blow up in the eastern Gulf of Mexico over the next 48 to 72 hours. So really the next 48 hours now. This thing will be making landfall around this time Thursday night. It's pretty wild to think about. But if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you notice this video is not as crisp as it normally is, I'm pretty wore out. I'm actually the head coach to both of my little girls' soccer teams, so I coached nonstop for 2 hours. So it'll take a lot out of you for you coaches tuning in, and your teachers also, all about that. So if you just don't see the energy there, that's because, just bear with me, folks. We're going to make our way through this nice and slow. So if you guys have anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling tonight. So hopefully this video will drop before, say, like 10 o'clock. I really hope it does. But anyways, here's our system. Very broad, very large. We were expecting this. It's popping off intense convection. It's still not very consolidated, very well put together. It's just a very large tropical storm chilling in the Western Caribbean. If you notice, we're getting this expansive outflow now. You see these high-level clouds kind of expanding this way, and then they kind of go off like that, like this. They're even spreading apart like this. This is creating an environment in the entire central and western Caribbean that supports a lot of rising air. Therefore, you're just getting continuous shower and storm activity firing in the Western Caribbean. This is indicated by all the colors you're seeing on your screen. So when I say convection, that's what I mean, shower and storm activity. So you see these blow-ups in whites, pinks. This tells us that we have very cold cloud tops, which means this convection that is firing is quite intense, soaring up pretty high up in the atmosphere. High up enough to where it's actually cold, and that's indicated by these colder cloud tops and some of these bright colors right in here in the white and the pink. So our actually center of low pressure is right into here, up underneath all this mid-level convection. So this thing is well on its way, but the fact that it's so large could hold it back a little bit, and we'll talk about that as we kind of go here. But it's a very large 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, Helene. So it's doing pretty well and strengthening at a pretty I would say a moderate clip right now. So the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Let's see if we actually got another update, because this was a little bit behind earlier, and it's updated now. So we're good to go. This is a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Man, this thing could get really close to the coastline of the Yucatan now. For example, Cancun has hurricane warnings now. This will be something to watch in the near term. Does this sneak and make a landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula? It very well could. We'll watch for that. Category 1 hurricane by tomorrow afternoon. By the time we get into 2 a.m. Thursday, it's a Category 1 hurricane still, but it's a higher end, 90-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. Between here, 2 a.m. Thursday, and here, 2 p.m. Thursday, so that 12-hour period as it's going across the eastern Gulf of Mexico, this is when we'll have the opportunity to maybe undergo a period of rapid intensification. So it's saying by Thursday afternoon, Category 3 major 115-mile-per-hour hurricane. Does it strengthen between here and Thursday evening before it makes landfall? It absolutely could. Right now, the peak intensity is a 115 mile per hour storm, which is what it's been since yesterday, pretty much. And check out how the cone rides up into the panhandle of Florida. And this thing is still a powerful tropical storm well into Florida. And I'm telling you, I cannot reiterate this enough, folks. Just because you're not in this little cone here does not mean you're not going to get impacts. This is not the impact zone. This cone is where the center of the storm could go, the actual low-level circulation. You're going to get plenty of impacts way into South Carolina. In fact, this area right here could get absolutely slammed by strong winds and flooding rain, especially up against the mountains of South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. So keep that in mind. The eastern side of tropical systems are the worst side. They bring the worst impacts, the highest tornado risk. They usually bring the strongest winds, and this system will be no different. And the fact that it's going to be moving so fast will allow it to not really it won't be able to weaken as fast, guys. If you get what I'm saying, like it'll hold on to the core of the system well inland because it's moving so quick. So that's the latest cone. There's your typical kind of classic look. M stands for major, H just for hurricane. So that's a category 2 or lower. And the S for tropical storm, D for tropical depression, S for tropical storm. So you see all these alerts, up for Florida and Georgia, even portions of Alabama. Check this out. We're actually going to look at the watches, warnings, and advisories. So it's another great way to look at it from Pivotal Weather. If you live in this kind of bright red color, I obviously don't know every county in Georgia and Florida, not even close. But if you're in these bright red color counties here, these are hurricane warnings. You see this pink color here, or purplish pink, that's hurricane watches. And if you see this kind of muted kind of red here, almost pinkish color, those are tropical storm watches. Folks, tropical storm watches are almost issued all the way into the low country of South Carolina. In fact, they're almost all the way up to Augusta already. I think tropical storm watches will actually get issued well up the Georgia-South Carolina border. Tropical storm warnings up in kind of this burgundy color here, which includes Orlando, the Tampa Bay area, just north of Tampa. You are under hurricane warnings. So, yeah, flood watches, well all the way up and across Georgia and into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, where you guys could actually get a significant flooding risk. So we'll dive into that when we get into the impact. So let's talk about the latest GFS first. All right, so this is the one from about an hour or two ago, the 18Z. We're going to start this all off by about Wednesday evening, so around this time tomorrow evening. It's a 984 millibar hurricane. It's already I think it's a 991 or 2 millibar, so it's saying it's only going to strengthen about 8 to 10 millibars. I could see it strengthening more than that, but we'll have to see. But we'll take it into Thursday morning. It deepens it pretty rapidly to a 973 millibar hurricane. Okay, and then we start to get into Thursday afternoon, and then it makes landfall around Thursday evening, as around a high-end category 2, low-end category 3 hurricane. But look at all this moisture, folks, getting thrown up into Georgia, South Carolina, well ahead of the actual system. And then the system actually moves into Georgia, and we have an all-out, if you're looking at the millibar here, this is still a hurricane into central Georgia. That's not Mitch saying there's going to be a hurricane moving right over Augusta. But if you're basing it off that millibar number, this is still a powerful storm system. And I'm very worried about areas inland. This is a different beast, guys, as far as inland impacts. Of course, it's going to do what it's going to do to the coastal regions of Florida. But the inland impacts with this is going to be pretty bad, I think. Okay, and then we start to get into Friday morning. I think there'll be a pretty stout cutoff in the Western Carolinas between, high-end significant impacts and just kind of moderate impacts. And I think that'll be from Charlotte to Columbia. But once you get into the Greenville-Spartanburg area, Asheville, Hickory, Gainesville, Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, it's going to be a rough night Thursday night into Friday morning. And then this thing weakens pretty rapidly as it moves north. What about the Euro? I had a few comments in the comments in this morning's video giving me flack for not showing you the Euro. Well, here it is. In fact, this is the 18Z Euro, so it's the latest one. The Euro, as we're getting into Thursday morning, already with a 976 millibar hurricane, category 2. makes landfall is around a Category 2 or 3 hurricane into the Bend of Florida. This would have it making landfall, maybe around, probably would move it right into the Steinhatchee area, affect Perry, Cross City, Mayo, Cedar Key. It would impact these guys pretty hard. And then, of course, it would move into southern Georgia, Valdosta. You guys would get hit very hard. Albany would get hit hard. It would move up and, affect Warner Robins. Macon would get hit pretty good. But, man, this is pretty wild stuff. It's pretty wild how strong this system is pretty far inland. You take a look at, well, yeah, I'm going to have to actually look at the southeast frame. I'm going to be a little bit everywhere in this video. Y'all just bear with me. I'm doing the best I can here. Just running on fumes, that's for sure. But, you take this deeper into the run, and it moves this low right over northeast Georgia sometime Friday morning, bringing a ton of impacts. Now, the Icon model, here it comes. It has this thing as a 965 major hurricane already Thursday morning. Comes on shore as, maybe as low as a low 950-ish kind of millibar hurricane, which would make it a Category 3, right into that same area that the Euro makes landfall. Moves in, brings a ton of impacts late Thursday night into Friday morning across southeast Georgia. Would bring a huge impacts into South Carolina, western South Carolina, western North Carolina, the mountains of the southern Alps. It would just shove a ton of water up against these foothills, that upslope flow. It would just cause some major flooding issues Friday. I think there's two main storylines as far as significant impacts of this system. One's obviously making landfall into Florida and it going into Georgia. But another isolated area that's going to get significant impacts is the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee and the foothills of North Carolina and also North Georgia. With so much moisture getting pushed up against these mountains, such a tight gradient of winds here. Strong winds, down trees are going to be a huge issue up here, no doubt about it. So I want to show you this for a reason. This system right now is a 991 millibar low as of the 8 p.m. update. Okay, and I'm showing you this because I want to compare what it actually is with how these hurricane models are initializing, because we know these hurricane models like to overdo it sometimes. So it is a 991, right? Well, the H-Wharf model, that's exactly what it's initializing it as. So it's actually doing well. The H-Wharf model, which is a hurricane model, wants to strengthen this into a Category 1 hurricane already Wednesday morning. Okay, and it gets very close to making a landfall right on top of Cancun, but it doesn't. Heads north. We get into tomorrow evening. It's about a Category 1 or 2 hurricane. We take it into Thursday morning. This is a major hurricane, Thursday morning. The west coast of Florida starting to show up on your screen here, the Bend of Florida. The H-Wharf model takes this as about a Category 3 or 4 hurricane sometime Thursday evening right into, it looks like it goes right, let's see where it goes. I'm going to kind of zoom into this area. It really wants to make a landfall right where the National Hurricane Center is saying. So this would obviously impact basically between Perry and Crawfordville. And I know you guys are not on the coast. I get it. But this area certainly is not it's not like the Grand Strand or Myrtle Beach or something like that, or, Miami, where you got a highly populated area along the coastal regions. That's not the case here. This would just come up and slam Highway 98 or Highway 30, whatever y'all call it in Florida. But we're going to move right between Crawfordville, make sure I'm saying that right, Newport, St. Marks, and Perry as a Category 3 or 4 hurricane. Look at that northern eye wall. It remains well intact into southern Georgia. And this is like 11 o'clock at night, folks. This thing is racing into Georgia, slamming Macon late in the evening. It's moving over Valdosta at this point, Albany, Valdosta. It's funny, I was messaging somebody on Twitter today, and he was telling me how you pronounce it, and I'm still probably butchering it. My brain's a little fried, guys. So never mind me. But this would bring heavy impacts to Atlanta. I think Atlanta would be on the western side. This would bring heavy impacts to Athens. That's a place I haven't mentioned. Athens, Georgia, home of the Bulldogs. Augusta would get big impacts. At Columbia, up to Charlotte, right on the fringe. I think Greenville, Spartanburg could get slammed. But this would move inland and bring just a lot of impacts. All the way into eastern Tennessee, this thing could still be packing a punch. What about the HMON model? It's initializing this as a 993, so weaker, actually, than what it is. Strengthens this into about a Category 1 or 2 hurricane sometime tomorrow evening. And then it gradually strengthens this into pretty much a major hurricane Thursday morning. And then it wants to make landfall a tick further west than the H-Wharf model. Okay, so it's a little bit closer to what Crawfordville, what is it, St. Mary, I think is what I mentioned. And those areas right here. If you see me looking down, I'm just kind of looking at my Google Maps. St. Mark's, I'm sorry, Newport. It would get a lot closer to these guys. And of course, you got the Tallahassee right up the road. Tallahassee would get absolutely slammed with something like this Thursday evening. I'm starting to think that this is going to make a technical landfall right as the sun is setting, if not after the sun is set. But this would bring a ton of impacts across Georgia. Georgia's going to get hit hard, folks. And the thing is this going to happen fast. It's going to happen when you're sleeping Thursday night, Georgia. I mean, it's going to. I don't even know if you folks are going to be able to sleep tomorrow night. I think most of the state of Georgia could go under a tropical storm watch. I don't see why. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. So that's the hurricane models. What about impact? So as far as how much rain is expected, if you live in this orange area here, that's anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of rain. Tallahassee going for 6 to 8. Atlanta, I mean, going for anywhere from 6 to 8 to maybe even 8 to 12. You know, Northeast Georgia going for 8 to 12 inches of rain. The upstate of South Carolina, the northwestern sections of the state, I mean, 6 to anywhere from 12 to inches. And then you got 12 to 16 inches of rain in some of these areas right here that are favored with all that moisture getting pushed up against the North Carolina mountains. This is the worrisome thing. The foothills and just the east side of the Appalachian Mountains, which is the North Carolina side of the mountains. There's going to be so much water getting pushed up against these higher elevations right into here. This is going to cause significant flooding issues right into here. Significant. I mean, I'm talking about well over a foot. This is going to be a heavy storyline in the coming days up here because you're going to get a lot of rain ahead of the storm already. And then the storm's going to move through and cause a lot of issues. Now, another way to look at this is the Weather Prediction Center. This is how much rain they're forecasting. And, you know, I'm not going to mention everywhere, but again, 3 to 5 inches of rain along the west coast of Florida. 5, 6, 7 inches of rain kind of in the bend of Florida. But then, of course, wherever the heart of the system hits, anywhere from 8 to 12. And then you go up to Georgia. And, I mean, Atlanta. You guys are going for 6 to 8 inches of rain. Greenville, Spartanburg, same thing. Columbia, 4 to 5. I could see that dropping depending on the track of the storm. Augusta around 5 inches of rain. Just kind of trying to mention a lot of areas here. And you look at North Carolina. This is the big concern, guys. Is right into here. You see these kind of white areas. This is over 10 to 15 inches of rain forecasted up against some of these kind of compartments and compartments right here in areas of the Western Carolinas. They could be heavily impacted with just that push of moisture, kind of that upslope flow, if you will, kind of squeezing up. I mean, when this moisture gets kind of pushed up into these higher elevations, it squeezes out all the moisture in the atmosphere, so you get so much more rain than what it looks like on radar sometimes. So definitely a wild scenario. There's Tennessee here. I mean, even eastern Tennessee, folks, a lot of rain. Eastern Alabama could get a lot of rain also. So that's a close look at that. The chance of excessive rainfall, if you live in this red area, that is a 40% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. And folks, I would not be surprised one bit if they put a high risk in southwest North Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So we just got to watch for that. Winds. Of course, this is something a lot of people are wondering about, right? We're going to go over multiple models here. This is the latest GFS. And this is potential wind gust in miles per hour. I think I accidentally had knots pulled up in one of my videos. I did not mean to do that. This is in miles per hour because we're in the U.S. And, for Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, going for the potential of a 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gust. Of course, you're going to get the brunt of this where this makes landfall, the core of this system. So, in that pink area, that's where you can get 90 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts based off the GFS. So this is where your strongest winds are going to be wherever this makes landfall. In the GFS, it makes landfall more so in the bend rather than the panhandle of Florida. Okay, you go up into Georgia. Look at these winds. This is overnight, Thursday night into Friday morning, folks. Look at this corridor of winds on the GFS. That's scary. I mean, this far inland, Waycross, gets hit. Statesboro, Swainsboro. Just trying to mention random names in eastern Georgia. Don't want to focus too much on that. But, all the way up to Augusta, 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts possible. Even very strong wind gusts over to Columbia, to Charlotte. low country of South Carolina. And I mean, you even take a look at North Carolina here. I mean, look at these wind gusts up into western North Carolina. So you mix 10 to 15 inches of rain, okay, because the soils are going to already be getting saturated in western North Carolina. But you mix this with the fact that you're going to be getting 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts. It's just a recipe for disaster up here. Power outages galore wherever the core of this kind of wind field ends up going over. Now the Euro, okay, which, you know, is trended a little bit stronger, okay, it wants to bring the core, same thing, right into the bend of Florida. Okay, so it brings 80 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts, of course, right where the eye wall hits. And same thing with Georgia, folks. I mean, look at these winds into Georgia, kind of the same area as the GFS. Not quite as aggressive, but I mean, that's still pretty bad. I mean, this is, like I said, in the middle of the night, tomorrow night. Not tomorrow night, in the middle of the night, Thursday night. Okay, very strong winds also in Atlanta, but man, you get just east of Atlanta, between Atlanta and Columbia, man, a rocky early wee hours of the morning, Friday morning into Friday morning. But look at this corridor of 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts. And then once again, you look at North Carolina here, and look at these higher wind gusts up against the higher peaks in the North Carolina mountains. Pretty wild stuff. All right, so the H-Wharf model, which I think has a reasonable worst case scenario, if that makes sense. If you had to ask me personally what I think the worst case scenario with this would be, I would think it would be a Category 4 hurricane. 5, no, I don't, but I could be wrong. But I think the worst case scenario with this is a Category 4 hurricane. Okay, forecast is for a 3. So this is predicted wind speeds, not gusts, but wind speeds from the H-Wharf model. And this is a great example. Center of the low pressure is right here, the worst of the winds. Where are they? They're on the east side. So this thing is spinning just like this, okay, around this low. Terrible arrows, so let's do it again. So it's spinning just like this, not much better. So of course, the winds and all the wind that's pushing all this water up into Tampa Bay, you know, is forcing all this water up against the Bend coastline, all the way into the Panhandle coastline. All that water is getting pushed up against just pretty much the Gulf of Mexico side of Florida, causing a ton of storm surge. But as far as winds, because we're about to talk about the storm surge, look at these, you know, 80 to 90 mile per hour winds, not wind gusts, but just consistent sustained winds starting to move into the Bend coastline of Florida Thursday evening. And then of course it brings this kind of compact wind field all the way into Georgia. I mean, you got right here going across southern Georgia, the heart of southern Georgia, folks. And I can mention every town in southern Georgia, but, you know, I just don't want to get too deep into that because I don't know 100% who's going to see what. But I keep thinking back to this. Idalia did a ton of damage in South Georgia. It's kind of like the thing that is not being talked about much. It did a lot of damage in southern Georgia. And I could see this being kind of a rinse and repeat type setup, unfortunately, for you folks. But it was going to bring a lot of winds up into North Georgia, western South Carolina, and then, of course, look at all these winds getting pushed up against the North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia mountains here. But one thing I want you to note here, too, is the flow around this is going like this also. So we're actually going to get some water pushed up against the South Carolina and Georgia coastline, too, where we actually could get some storm surge into this area also. So, I mean, strong winds are coming, guys. Storm surge, I'm not going to try to butcher any of these names. No point in doing that. But in this purple area, the Bend of Florida, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge is forecast. In this area right here, getting closer to where, like the Forgotten Coastline, 5 to 10 feet. You know, they're forecasting 5 to 8 feet in the Tampa Bay, down to Fort Myers, maybe 3 to 5 feet. And then look, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge along the low country South Carolina coastline and the Georgia coastline, northeast sections of Florida. So, there's going to be a tornado threat too. Like tomorrow, there's a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location in the green area. It's a tropical producing tornado threat, mainly for Florida. And then we're going to look at day 3, which is for Thursday, slight risk from Myrtle Beach all the way down to Orlando, Tampa, and this entire area. This is driven off a tornado threat. So, there's going to end up being a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of the given location in this yellow area when we wake up tomorrow. No doubt about it. There's going to be a legit tornado risk Thursday night into Friday morning in this area. It's going to be a nocturnal threat. So, areas of Georgia got to deal with the winds, and North Florida got to deal with the winds. You got to deal with the tornado risk too. It's going to be a very, just because this makes landfall in Florida, we aren't even close to done with it. So, the last thing we'll kind of wrap up with this video is the upper wind pattern, the environment that supports the potential for this system to kind of explode in the Gulf of Mexico. So as this gets right into here, you notice that number's beginning to drop right here, right? So this is Wednesday evening. This is around this time tomorrow, right? If you notice, winds in the low to mid levels of the atmosphere go like this, cyclonically around this system, okay? They spin just like that. And the upper levels of this system, 40,000 feet up in the air, which is what we're looking at here, winds at 200 millibars, 40,000 feet up in the air, air is being dispersed outward just like that. It's doing it now, and it's going to be doing it as we're getting into tomorrow also. Okay, air is being dispersed out right here. It's getting rapidly dispersed outward up here because of a jet boost from this upper trough diving the jet down here into the southeast. So air is rapidly shooting across this area right into here. Now, this system is going to be dealing with a little bit of westerly flow hitting the system. I would say watch for that. But I think as this system begins to move closer to the coastline, the shear will actually work in motion with the storm and it won't negatively impact it much. But there's so much air being dispersed out in this area of the storm that this thing is just living and breathing its best life. There's no air really affecting the system down here, no real shear. So you would say 75-80% of the surrounding areas of this storm has a favorable environment, no doubt about it. So much air is being dispersed out away. It gets a boost, has an opportunity to rapidly intensify. And the fact that this thing is just shrouded in such a moist environment, we take it into, this is Thursday morning, a ton of dry air. We're getting really close. You notice all this dry air right into here. This is kind of inching a little bit close, but of course, this thing is compact deeply by a moist environment, tons of moist air getting slung northward. And this is because of all that expanding outflow north, northeast, and east of the system, kind of throwing a very moist environment well ahead of this system. Now, dry air is trying to get into the back half of the system right here, right? The last second, and it could get there. I think it will be getting hit by shear on the west side, and it looks like it tries to get there right at the last second. In fact, you take a closer look at this. Let's look right here. Look how close the dry air gets. It gets very close, but still, the southern side of the system is pretty moist. So I just don't think the dry air is going to get there in time to really significantly weaken this system. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for working your way through that video with me. That was a tough one. My eyes are starting to shut on me. Very tired. I wake up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock every morning, guys. So it's definitely well past my bedtime. But God bless all y'all. Stay safe out there. We'll do it again tomorrow morning and then again tomorrow evening. God bless.